So we're talking to Dr. Juliet McGrattan today. Thanks very much for being with us. We do appreciate it. So Juliet is, she was a GP for a long time, and then has completely shifted focus into looking after female runners at menopause, which is great. So she's got a book called Run Well, which I've had a quick chuffy at, but I've not had a chance to read it in the time that we've when we first chatted. But she also runs the UK division, the UK I'm going to let you describe it, of 261 Fearless, which is just brilliant. And I'm going to shut up there because I want you to why don't you tell us about how you got on this journey, how you got to where you are, and bring in the 261 Fearless stuff as well, because that's kind of cool.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. This is fab. So particularly running in menopause has become my thing, but it wasn't always that way. I was a non-runner. I was a busy mum of 3 preschoolers and a GP. And I started running really just to get out of the house, not knowing that it would completely change my life and give me a new career. And I spent 16 years as a GP, 22, I think, altogether as a doctor. And once I realized how powerful running was for health, mental and physical, I just became hooked and evangelical and learned as much as I could and took on different roles within that sort of field, which led me to writing a book. The first one was Sorted, the Active Woman's Guide to Health. And then that was followed up by Run Well. And then I began sort of talking and speaking and before I realized it, I just found that was where my passion was, and that's how I wanted to improve the health of women. So moving from behind the desk to just taking women by the hand. And one of the things that I did for that was to join 261 Fearless, which is a global women's running network set up by Catherine Switzer. 261 was her bib number in the Boston Marathon when the course director or the race director tried to throw her off the course because she was a woman. And she went on to be an amazing advocate for women in sport, particularly in running, and set up 261 Fearless really to provide opportunities for women to run, but also to really help women become empowered through running. And I think you know yourself, when you do something that you didn't think you could do, you suddenly have knock-on effect in other areas of your life. So I joined the global team as their women's health expert, and I, as you say, lead it now in the UK with my colleague Lisa Ruggles. And we have 7 clubs now in the UK, and those clubs are really special places where particularly women who might not think they could run or don't fit the stereotype of what they think is a runner can come and have a go. Yeah, and we do lots of strength training and drills and balance work and a lot of games to try and help our women run healthily. That's a long answer to your short question, but I have lots of hats.
It's a great answer. Where are the clubs based? What sort of, are they all over, or are they kind of condensed?
Yeah, we've got Newcastle and Teesdale in the northeast, Lune Valley, Lancaster in the northwest, right down to London, Greenwich, Cambridge, and Burwell, which is near Oxford. So scattered around, and we're doing a big recruitment at the moment to look for more women who might want to coach as well. So it's growing, and it's really, I absolutely love it. It's a huge part of my life.
Amazing. That's really great. Angie, do you want to kick off with your question? Because I think that's a really good one to start with.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm itching to ask this on behalf of probably thousands of women that I've met and spoken to and helped over the years. There's a lot of confusion I find around this question of when does perimenopause start? How do I know that if what I'm experiencing and what I'm feeling, is it down to perimenopause or something else? Am I going crazy? Have I got arthritis? Is there something wrong with my joints, my muscles? You know, how do I answer that question of, has it really started for me? And then leading on to that big question, what do I do from here? Do I need to go and see my GP? Do I need to, spend 10 hours on the internet Googling it? What can I do for myself?
Where to start?
I know, it's a meaty one, isn't it?
Yeah, no, but it's so important. And I think having been a GP and sat in the chair and had women come in to see me, with exactly those questions. What's happening to me? Is it, have I got cancer? You know, have I got something seriously wrong with me? As you said, have I got dementia? But often being very, very afraid, or sometimes just not even knowing what's happened to them and realizing that they're just not the same person that they used to be. So I think it's important to say, you know, it can come in all shapes and sizes. For some women, obviously they have very few symptoms and they're hardly affected at all. But for other women, it really can be life-changing symptoms that make every day hard. And I think the other thing which is tricky here is that we now understand that those symptoms of the menopause, the perimenopause, can start up to 7, 8, 9, even 10 years before you hit that menopause when you haven't had a period for a year. So the average age of the menopause is 51 in the UK, but it's still normal to have your menopause at 46. Less than that, and we start calling it early and premature, but 10 years before 46 is 36. And I don't think many women in their late 30s are really even thinking that the symptoms that they have could be due to the perimenopause. So it is a really, really difficult thing. And having, as I said, been a GP and also had very, very little training on the menopause, I don't remember any at medical school. The training that I got was really through my own awareness that I had an educational need and going and seeking it out. Like, there is more education now, but there are still many of us, and I include myself in that, from my time sitting there, not actually even contemplating that it could be the menopause, because my knowledge on it was very, very little. And I was in that, 50 periods changing, that's the menopause. So there's a lot of shift now and a lot more awareness about the symptoms, but it does make it very difficult for you to know what's going on. As a guide, what would I say? I would say, first thing, maybe if you know your genetics, if you know that when your mum, for example, had her menopause and her perimenopause began, that can be helpful. You do often follow your mother in your symptoms. That's, you're not always possible to know, might not have had those conversations, or your mother might not be around to ask. But that can be a simple guide. So if your mum did have an early premature menopause, then your chances of having one are a little bit higher. So that's an important sort of first step. I think the other thing is just to think about it, to look to see if there's any kind of patterns. To start with, you are still having your periods with the perimenopause. So seeing, is there any pattern? Is there any sort of cyclical nature to it? Often there isn't, and perimenopause symptoms can just randomly come and go, and you just don't even really know. But what you don't want to do is be sitting at home worrying that you've got something really wrong with you and not doing something about it. So I think if there's anything like that you're not sure about, is going and seeing a GP and just expressing your concerns, and yourself saying, do you think this could be the perimenopause? Because, as I say, it might not have crossed their minds, but at least if you raise the issue and you ask the question. I learned a lot over my time as a GP that generally the patients have the answers. And if you ask them and you listen to them, a lot of the time they come up with what the solution is going to be. So don't look at your general life. Are you being healthy? Are you doing what you can to be healthy? But there's something new, there's something changing, something that's persistent that you're worried about. I would just say, please just go and get checked and ask, and yourself raise the question of perimenopause. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's brilliant. And yeah, very much in line with the advice that I give my ladies, myself. And often I find that, yeah, it is a bit of reassurance that they're asking for and needing. And there's also this sort of, yeah, I'm just thinking of, sometimes you picked up on that thing of, this is tricky to put words around, but you picked it up on yourself. So I want to go there a little bit, that not all GPs have the same knowledge. Although, yeah, it is changing. Thankfully, it is changing. There's still a bit of a lottery as to who you go and see and what kind of support and advice you get. So there can sometimes be a bit of trepidation about making that appointment and going there and hoping to get the answers and hoping to get some help with it. So yeah, I wondered what your thoughts were around that, and if we if we were to go in with maybe a list of questions or some guidance as to what we need to go in and ask for, is there such a thing as, you know, some ideal questions to ask around that to get the best help from the GP?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the important thing to say is that every GP that I know, and I'm sure the majority of GPs, don't mind if they can't answer your questions. You know, you cannot be an expert on everything. And as I say, most that I know would be more than happy to say, do you know what? I don't know the answer to that. Either I'm going to go away and find out, or I'm going to ask you to see my colleague, because usually in a general practice, there is one GP at least, often the woman, a female GP, not always, but who has more experience, or maybe even a specialist in menopause care. So it doesn't matter who you see to start off with, but have those questions written down, ask them, but never be afraid to say, I don't know if you're going to know the answer to these. Is there somebody else in the practice that I would be better to ask? Or even ask the receptionist when you ring up to make the phone call, is there somebody in the practice that usually sees the menopausal ladies? Because I've got lots of questions. So I would, you know, writing things down is helpful, because otherwise you get in there, and especially if you're feeling a little bit nervous about what you're going to talk about, everything goes out of your mind. So never be afraid to go in with a little list of questions, but check before, as I say, ask the receptionist, and then be really open with the GP. And my experience would be that they're not going to mind, and they'll say, well, yeah, that I can cope with this part of your questions, but I think it will be helpful. I can ask my colleague, you come back and see me, I'll get the answers, or perhaps you should make an appointment with my colleague. And if there isn't one within your practice, there is most likely one in your area who might be more of a menopause specialist as well. So yeah, getting the right person can sometimes be tricky. As you say, there is more education, which is wonderful, but even still, most GPs are not going to be offended, and are more than happy to get you to access the right care, because that's one of the roles.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, thank you for that. That's really good. Yeah, okay. So if we switch it around a little bit to coming from the running angle at this, what other things do we need to be aware of as a runner going into perimenopause? Yeah, that's a big question, but from a GP
it's a good one. One of the things I'm going to say first of all was something that I've more recently become aware of, and may not be known to all. And I was on a menopause panel at the National Running Show with Juliet McGrattan, who is a sports dietitian. And one of her specialist areas is RED-S. Some people call it REDS, relative energy deficiency in sport. Now, that is not just for elite athletes. That's anybody who's not fueling themselves enough to live their active lives, including their run training. So if you are somebody that is training for something in particular, you're cranking up the miles, you're doing a lot of distance, you're working your body really hard, and you haven't increased your energy intake, then you may become in a state of energy deficiency. Or if you're somebody who runs and trains as normal, but again, is not taking in enough energy for that, you can be in energy deficiency. And if energy deficiency continues, one of the things your body does is shuts down functions that aren't essential. And one of those can be your reproductive system. So your periods can become less frequent and can even stop. And so Rini was pointing out, and I thought this was really important, that if you are training heavily, or you think you may be at risk of energy deficiency and your periods are stopping, some women think that's the perimenopause because their periods are stopping, when actually it's not. It's that their body is energy deficient. So I think that's just something that might not be kind of mainstream, but is really important. And she's got lots of great stuff on her Instagram page and in her book as well. So if you're interested in thinking about that, so that's one aspect. The other aspect of it is just really what I've been experiencing myself, and that all your perimenopausal symptoms can have a knock-on effect to your running. If you lose your sleep because you're waking up with night sweats, you haven't got the energy to run, your body can't repair as well. If you're having hot flushes and struggling to control your temperature, suddenly your running kit that you would normally be fine for your long run, you're just wanting to run in a vest or a sports bra because your temperature's too hot, your joints can ache. As I experienced yesterday, your breasts can get really tender, which can hurt when you're running. Your bladder can become weaker. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but also things in your mind as well, because you can lose your motivation a little bit. You lose your drive. You can find it harder to get yourself to go out running, or once you're running, to give yourself that extra bit of to keep going when it gets hard. So, you know, I could go on forever, but endless numbers of symptoms that do have a knock-on effect to runners. And I think if you're an established runner, it means it can put you off. So you might end up reducing or even stopping your running. But if you've never started or you're a beginner, it just makes that barrier so much bigger to running, which is such a shame, because it can be a really useful way to help you negotiate and manage your way through the perimenopause and menopause as well.
Very much so. I mean, I was going to say, what sort of changes should right word is it? What sort of changes might be necessary for women to make as they sort of get into that menopausal kind of stage when it comes to training? I mean, we talked briefly about fueling. Does that change even more, or, you know, training plans, that kind of thing?
You might find that your fueling does, in the sense that your digestive system can sometimes go a bit wobbly during perimenopause. So things that you could tolerate before, you no longer can. So you might be more prone to getting runner's trots. So when previously you might have run and used gels, that might suddenly not be something that you can tolerate anymore. So there's that side of kind of the GI side of things and gastrointestinal side of things. I think, what did you ask me again? Because I've gone off on a tangent. I'm hesitant to this.
What changes could or
to your training,
training, anything really around running that might...
Definitely. One of the symptoms that bothers women the most is that their weight can change and their weight can increase, particularly around the middle of the body. And this is due to lots of different reasons, including changes in your metabolism and the way your body's dealing with the energy that you put in. But that can affect your running, because number one, it can make you feel a bit heavier. So running feels harder, which is never a good thing. But it can also sometimes make you feel more self-conscious about your body. So a lot of women think, oh, well, I just need to run more because I need to burn off more energy. And that often doesn't seem to make any difference. So sometimes the thought that you need to run more actually isn't the key. Sometimes you need to run less. And one of the things that you need to really think about doing is about building your muscle mass in your body, because we know that muscle mass gradually reduces after the age of about 40, significantly so around the perimenopause and menopause. So we need to, if we do nothing, we will lose muscle. But so we need to take some active steps to make sure that we're doing strength and conditioning work and building muscle. And that does have a benefit on your running as well. Even though you might not think it does actually make you a more efficient runner and a stronger runner, and less likely to get injured as well. And the other thing I would say just about what you need to think about with your running is the rest and recovery, because we know that your repair processes, they're very good, but they can slow down a little bit as you get older. So sometimes, as I say, running less is the key, and having a bit more rest and recovery can be important as well. But I think it's important to be flexible. Every woman's different, but just to really pay attention to what your body's telling you. And weighing up with, I find, is that an excuse, or is it my body actually telling me that? So sometimes that can be a bit tricky.
Oh yes, we all know that, don't we?
I think sort of following on from what you're saying with the, I did a very, very brief overview on strength training, protein intake, and things like that, and trying to make sort of women understand that start building your nutrition more around the protein intake to make sure you're getting adequate protein, as you're saying, our digestion alters, and also how we so our absorption on protein diminishes as we get older as well, and losing between 3 to 8. I think it's 3 to 8% of muscle mass if we're not looking after it from every decade. I think that is huge, especially if you haven't got an awful lot of muscle mass anyway. So with the do you advise on how much protein, give an estimate on women's protein intake, or do you just say just get more protein in?
So I'm really careful not to really give advice on that, because I'm not a dietitian, and I think every woman is different. So I generally tend to just try to look at what's possible in your life, what fits with you. Could you put a little bit of protein in every meal? other ways that you can sneak it in, either through meat or plant-based sort of foods, and sneak in what you can, rather than giving, because I find if I talk to women about numbers and things that they just, I don't know, it suddenly feels a bit overwhelming and not manageable. I absolutely agree that as we get older, we need more, not less protein, and sometimes people aren't aware of that at all, but particularly important if we want to build those muscles.
Yeah, I suppose I'm quite lucky. The ladies that come to me actually want more precise, sort of like on rough numbers, really, to make sure they are getting enough. I train quite a broad range of age groups, but mainly sort of around my age, sort of in late 40s, early 50s. So and I've got to say, I can feel a difference in my strength, and I feel a big difference in muscle mass as well. So that, which is my main thing, is to try and build more through. So with the strength training, how often would you advise women to look at strength training? I know what I give people, but it's good getting other people's tips.
Well, if you look at the Chief Medical Officer's guidelines, they're recommending strength exercises twice a week. And that a minimum of twice a week. They don't say for how long, but 15-20 minutes, even up to 30 minutes is ideal if you can. But again, sometimes something is better than nothing. And I think if we get overwhelmed, if we sometimes think, oh, I've got to do an hour, or I've got even half an hour sometimes, even if you can just do 5 or 10 minutes in a little window that you've got, that is better than doing nothing. Because I think it's really important to understand why we want to build the muscle. Yeah, because we're losing it, but why does it matter if we're losing it? And what we really understand now about muscles is they do so much more than just move our joints, and they actually help to make us healthy. So when you exercise and you use your muscles, they release myokines, and myokines are anti-inflammatories. They go around in your circulation, buzz around for even a couple of hours after you've done a vigorous workout, and they act as anti-inflammatories. And we know that those major diseases like heart disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, types of cancer, even dementia, are partly caused by, or at least sped up by, inflammation in the body. So one of the reasons that we're at more risk of those as we get older is because we have less muscle mass, less myokines, and less sort of anti-inflammatory action. So while we think about the muscle training and strength training as being great for our running, helping to protect our joints, helping us to keep our balance when we're getting older, actually one of the really important reasons is that they just frankly make us healthier. So sometimes I found myself knowing that helps me to stay motivated, and it isn't just about looking toned. There is so much more to it, and reducing disease risk to me now, maybe not in years gone by, but now feels a bit more prominent. And thinking, what can I do to future-proof my body?
I think it's like that. What you're saying is a lot of people, and that they're actually referring to it a lot now as one of your biggest organs, aren't they? When they're sort of referring to the muscles, because of it's the biggest amino acid, so your protein pool and regulating blood glucose. So the more muscle, your metabolic rate speeds up as well. And I think my biggest fear is getting old was I think I mentioned on one of the videos, I was walking to the shop and an older gentleman couldn't move well, dropped his keys, went to pick them up and just face planted, but then couldn't get himself up because he was so weak. And it's like, I think often it's not always the balance that's gone, it's the strength, and then the balance. So everybody's going, oh, I need to do all my balance training. I was like, well, you probably actually need to get strong in the right places first before. But it's a bit sort of chicken and egg, which came first. But that must be so terrifying, to be stuck on the floor and not actually have the strength to maneuver yourself even onto your front, to crawl, to pull yourself up onto something. That's and I think that's, to me, and probably at the same point of view now, I'm looking at the health implications of training. Before I was a bodybuilder, it's the vanity. Didn't matter what I look, it didn't matter about anything else about function. It was about how you looked. Now I've completely changed what I do to actually be functional. And so within your experience with older people and the falls, what did you find the biggest issue was with the elderly, sort of, in the falls and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, all really important stories, because you do see it all the time. And I think it's a case of use it or lose it. And those nerve pathways that activate those muscles, and those nerve pathways from your position sensors, if you don't use them, then they sort of wither. You can reactivate them again, but they become quiet, and then they sort of wither away. So it very much is a case of use it or lose it. And just simple things like those forward lunges that you know lots of runners do for strength and conditioning. That's the thing that's going to stop you falling over when you go down to pick your keys up off the ground.
Yeah.
Because your body's kind of got muscle memory, and those muscles required to do that are strong, and the right sort of pathways are activating. So I definitely think it's a big case of use it or lose it. But I think what's hard is that if it's pouring with rain on a Saturday morning and you're lying in bed thinking about parkrun, it's really hard to make yourself be motivated by how you're going to feel when you're 80. So although it's like an overall motivator for me, it's not, and I hear this from other people as well, it's not going to get me out of bed in the pouring rain. The thing that will get me there is the fact that my friend said she'll meet me there, and I'm going to go and meet some other, it's more what motivates everybody is very, very different. For somebody, that might be enough. They maybe have had an elderly relative with a fall and experienced that personally, and thinking, I no way want to be like that, and I'm going to go to parkrun. But I think it's really important to think about what motivates you, because what motivates you now might not be what motivated you when you were younger. And I think we have to kind of change and adapt a little bit.
Yeah,
it's true. It's so true, isn't it? Just the same with like bone density. You need to do some strength training for your bone density, but you said that just now, it's not a motivating factor, because you can't see it, you can't feel it until you fall over and fracture something. You're not even aware you've got a problem. So it's difficult finding those motivating.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Definitely.
That's what I was going to ask about, because this whole conversation is reminding me of some recent research that I was looking at to help my own clients with some stuff, and the link between resistance training and muscle strength and maintaining that, and cognitive health, this big fear around dementia, and that being like a thing over there, and I'm wanting to run to lose weight or feel good in myself, cope with stress, all of those things. And then there's this dementia thing that sort of creeps up, and it feels like it's almost waiting for me. And I speak on behalf of myself and a lot of women thinking about that. So I think it's really, I'm really pleased that you've talked about that link between muscle strength, maintaining our strength and our muscle mass, and it being more than about looking good, toning, more than about feeling strength, that there's other benefits as well that can help, not just our running, but just feeling good in ourselves at a time in life when some of that can feel like it's going off the rails slightly. And then linking it in as well, there is a question coming about bone health, and how can we understand, can you explain to us about how muscles link in with bone mass and bone health, and linking that into our overall health, and this worry of osteopenia and osteoporosis that is a real concern for some people. How does that all work together?
Yeah, sure. And I think this goes along with what we don't know everything. There's so much we don't know. There's so much we still don't understand, especially how all these organs and different parts of our body interact with each other and interact with what's going on in the brain. Certainly bones do so much more than we ever thought they did. We just thought they were there like kind of a coat hanger that we just sort of hang our body off, but we actually now know they release hormones, they store minerals, they have messengers that go all around the body. So they definitely play a really important role in overall health as well. I think, like muscle mass, we do lose bone mass. I mean, you reach your peak when you're about 19, 20. That's about, you've only got 90%, sorry, when you're 19 or 20, and then you gain about 10% more, and then it gradually starts reducing after about 40. That loss speeds up again around the menopause, and then it quietens down a bit, but it still sort of reduces. So again, if you do nothing, then you're going to lose bone mass. Some people are genetically more likely to lose it than others. So again, if you have a family history of low bone density, like osteopenia or osteoporosis, then important to get some advice as to what you could do specifically to maintain or increase your bone mass. But all of us need to think about it. And if you're a runner, then that's brilliant, because you are doing high impact activity that puts a little jolt and a little shiver through the bones, and they respond to stress. When they're under stress like that, they go, oh, okay, right, we've got to make ourselves stronger. So that high impact activity is really important. That doesn't have to be running, that can be jumping, that can be dancing, anything that, as I say, jolts the bones a bit. But we now understand, we never really used to think that the muscle did very much, but we now understand that the muscle attaches to the bone via a tendon. And when you use the muscle, it tugs on the tendon, which tugs on the bone a little bit and stimulates bone growth too. So actually resistance exercises are known to increase and improve bone density as well, so that it's all kind of works together for our good, and isn't sort of separated into bone strength and muscle strength. It all kind of works together. As I say, we don't really understand. I know the piece of research that you're talking to about reducing dementia and increasing your muscle mass, and that's such a positive thing to know, that even in older people who've already got reduced muscle mass, that they can make a difference by doing active muscle strengthening work. So I think it's quite an exciting area. I think there's lots of positives, and I think as we understand it more, maybe we'll have more specific guidance about what type of exercise for how long, and I think that will come in time for us to get the most benefits. But again, all our risks of all these things are very different. Everybody's different, and a lot of that depends on our DNA and our genetics.
We were talking, I think pretty much everybody that's been on has talked in some way, shape or form about strength training, and it being not just, it's just necessary. It's not, it's no longer optional kind of thing. It tends to be the message. But of course, women who want to run, they're not overly fond of doing anything but running. So we're really down to sort of, what are the practical applications, not applications, what are the practicalities around that? I suppose what I'm saying is, what's the minimum effective dose? If you've got a group of female runners who desperately do not want to do any strength training, and you want to get them doing that minimum effective dose 10 to 15 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week, what sort of things you're thinking from somebody's perspective who doesn't know what strength training is, what it involves, how to get it, what can they do, safety of their own home, all that kind of good stuff.
I know we've got a strength coach on the call, so I fully admit that I don't really enjoy it. I've tried to find ways to enjoy it, and I know it's good for me, and I know I need to do it, and I know it helps my running, but I still find it quite difficult. So where I can, I try to incorporate it into what I'm doing. Now, you can get a certain amount through the running itself. You can include some speed intervals and some hills, because if you're doing that, you are asking more of your muscles. And you've seen those sprinters with those massive, great big thigh muscles. That doesn't all come from the gym. A lot of that comes from the sprinting itself, and hills. So if you really want to start somewhere, just look at the runs that you're already doing and seeing what you can add into those runs. The other thing is stopping while you're on a run. And doing a little bit. Now, you can only really use your body weight, and body weight will give you a certain amount of resistance, or you can use resistance bands. They're quite easy to put into your pocket. So if you're on a run and you want to stop somewhere and include like 5-10 minutes of just doing some squats with a band on your legs, or some press ups against the railings to have a bit of a breather, then that's a sort of sneaky way to fit it in. And we do quite a lot of that in 261. Actually, we stop at different times, and so you kind of don't realize you're doing it. But then I think just looking at what works for you. So I live in the middle of nowhere, and I wanted to do some strength work, particularly when it was COVID. And I actually use an app and do strength class on there once or twice a week. I'd love to say more than that, but realistically at the minute it's once or twice a week. And that's about as fun as I can make it for me. It's got some music, it's got an instructor making sure that I'm doing it right, because really you could do with some advice to making sure that your form is good. We don't want women to just go out being told they've got to lift heavy stuff and just doing it and getting injured. So I think start with body weight, add some bands, maybe some light weights at home. And then when you want to do more, then actually see if you can get some advice. It may even just be a one-off with a personal trainer. It may be just watching a video on YouTube really closely, being in front of the mirror yourself, trying to make sure that you're using good form, because you don't want to get injured. And looking for things that you, sorry, go on.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, just thinking it's, I'm very much, yes, you can go, you can pick up a kettlebell, you can do whatever you want, but if you're not doing it right, even a lightweight, and I get a lot of women that come to me and go, I've got a 4 kilo. So I hate to break it to you ladies, 4 kilo really is not going to add an awful lot of benefit. And the problem is, if you're not moving well, using a 4 kilo, you can do it and probably not going to get any issues, but you're not going to know if you're moving well. So I honestly, kettlebells are a brilliant tool. Kettlebells in the wrong hands can be injury risk, a significant, it can put you at risk of a significant injury as well. So again, you only need somebody to cast eyes on you. There's some excellent coaches throughout the country, that it's about how you move. And it's like, if you sprint intervals but you're not functionally sprinting and you're not moving well, then are you getting the benefit? So I think it's always worth, again, work with people and have somebody with an experienced eye just every so often check you out, is what I would advise. So, and I've seen some interesting techniques on kettlebells, is all I will say.
Yeah, do you know, I've never done kettlebells, and I haven't got one at home, and I wouldn't have the first idea what to do with it. So if I was going to start something like that, I mean, I've got dumbbells, you know, but I don't know kettlebell technique, and I would be wanting somebody to give me the basics of, right, what, because normally with dumbbells, you know, you don't want to use gravity, do you want to control the weight? But my impression of kettlebells is that you've got the swing. So I would want advice.
Yeah, I don't start people off on a swing. I start on a basic hip hinge, which I've done a video very briefly on, because if you can't do a hip hinge, then you don't want to be going to the deadlift. You can't do the deadlift, then you don't want to be going to the swing. So it's all adding layers to it, and it all starts from the ground up and the foot. So all this needs assessing, but it's not complicated. It's short, it's sweet, and it's easy.
That's what I said. It can feel overwhelming, can't it? But
oh, absolutely,
it doesn't. And then it's staying motivated. And what can you do? I leave things around my house in different places so that I walk past and I see it, and it's maybe just a prompt to pick up the dumbbell while I'm waiting for the kettle to boil or something. And I try and have to sneak little bits and pieces in like that as well. But I also think even everyday activities sometimes, like I would say, leave your trolley at the front door and carry the bags to your car. Just and park your car on the other side of the car park. Then it might not seem like much on one occasion, but if you do that twice a week, every week for a year, actually that adds up to a reasonable amount. And if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So I think look for those little opportunities in every day as well, so it doesn't feel too scary.
That reminds me of one of my clients from years ago, and we met up recently just for a chat and a catch up, and she's in her 70s, and she'd walked to the cafe that we were meeting at with a big heavy backpack with some books in, and which was a practical thing. She needed to take the book somewhere, but it was also, she was thinking in her mind, this is my resistance training, and she'd remembered that from when I'd worked with her. I was really proud of her for that.
That's great. It just shows, little bits add up, definitely.
Yeah.
So Juliet, right at the beginning, I don't know, it kind of popped up, but you said you'd made the shift into menopause and running, particularly the running side of it, because you were passionate about it, and you'd realised in your previous profession just the many health benefits of running. We were wanting to we weren't just focused entirely on people who are running right now. We kind of wanted to hit some of the people who might want to run and sort of give them a little bit of a little bit of motivation and a bit of support perhaps to get doing that. So I'd just be interested to hear you rattle off all the health benefits of running. Just go for it.
What time do we have to end this call?
That's what I'm doing it now. I'm thinking, I've got to get this in.
Oh goodness. Well, where to start with that? I personally feel that the biggest benefits for me, and also that I see in other people, is the psychological side. It is the doing something you didn't think you could do. It is setting yourself a little challenge, succeeding in that challenge and feeling amazing because of that. And then that having an empowering effect on the other areas of your life, giving you increased self-esteem, increased self-belief, increased self-worth, self-confidence, having a better relationship with your body and appreciating what it can do rather than how it looks. And for me, and it's also about social health, so bringing friends into your life, giving you the opportunity for community, to meet with other people, can be an opportunity to travel, meet people from different walks of life that you wouldn't have met otherwise. But it doesn't have to be. It can be a solo, very private activity, something that you do. And women often start like that because they feel self-conscious and worried they're going to hold you back and be too slow. But often as you grow and you get all those benefits I described, then it can become something which links you very much with other people, whether it's one other woman or whether it's a whole community, online or offline. So those are the kind of the psychological benefits, as well as reducing a risk of dementia, which is important to say. And there's really good evidence that physical activity will do that. And then obviously the multiple physical health benefits. So helping to prevent heart disease, type 2 diabetes, helping to prevent and treat osteoarthritis. Definitely want to get that one in there because a lot of people think running wrecks your knees. It doesn't. The kind of running that we do, recreational runners, as long as we had some strength and conditioning and make sure we're using good running form and we've got lots of rest and recovery time, it's going to help our knees, not ruin our knees. So I think it's important to put that one in there as well. Which body system have I not mentioned? Every body system you come up with, and this is the thing, when I was doing general practice, every person that came in to see me with whatever problem they had, I would, in the back of my mind, I'd be thinking, yeah, do you know, running can really help this, or you might not have this problem if you'd been a regular runner. So pretty much any system you can think of, but I think the most powerful ones for me and other women that I speak to are the ones that they can measure more easily, and it's how they feel. And that doesn't always relate to their health risk of disease, but it's actually how they feel as a person and the confidence that they gain.
No,
Is that a good summary?
No, that's a really good answer. Really good answer, because I know a lot of women do run for weight loss and managing the weight, things like that. That's absolutely fine, but it's so much, or it can be so much bigger than that. It's a really good answer. But I do have this visual of you as a GP sat behind your desk with your prescription pad out, going running 3 times a week. There you go.
Well, I think that, yeah, that's, but also having to be in a position where you could understand why that person wasn't doing it. What were their barriers to running? What was making running seem unachievable for them? And getting an insight into that too, I think, has been really useful and powerful for me. And not everybody wants to run, you know, so often it is just a case of moving or doing something rather than doing nothing. But obviously for me, it was running that made the big change.
What were the barriers? What were the main barriers that you used to find to running specifically? I suppose it really amounts to exercise in general, but running specifically, barriers?
Many and varied. Again, a lot of it psychological. A big one is people just thinking they haven't got the time. Time is always a huge barrier. How am I going to fit that in? Look, I've got 3 kids at school and I work and blah. So trying to break that down into the sense that even 10 minutes can give you health benefits. Not feeling confident, not knowing where to start, just not knowing what to do. Okay, I need to do some exercise. Walking is underrated. So a lot of the time it's just giving simple advice about moving more and walking. And you can build up anywhere from walking, but not yeah, a lot of people thinking, well, I want to do it, but I don't even know where to begin. So trying to make it accessible and trying to have links in the community, people that you can direct them to and point them to help that journey. And then sometimes worrying that it was going to make their conditions worse. So somebody with asthma thinking, well, having an asthma attack or being out of breath is horrible. Why would I want to go and do an exercise that makes me feel out of breath? And is that going to affect my asthma? And you know, we know that that's not the case, and it shouldn't be the case. And that if you are getting more wheezy from or coughing from asthma when you're exercising, then you need to go and speak to your practice nurse or your GP about your asthma control. But those kind of worries, and arthritis, is it going to hurt? Is it going to make it worse? So I think people generally want to do the right thing, but sometimes they just don't know where to start.
Yeah, I think overwhelm can be a huge thing of really stalling, even starting or progressing, and it can be a real demotivator, can't it? What do you find is one of the ways that increases that confidence around that, to break down that overwhelm? What do you find helps the ladies that you work with?
I think what helps them the most, and so I have a 261 Fearless Club in Lancaster. So every Friday morning I'm there with that group of women. And I think what helps them the most is each other. It's not what I'm saying or doing necessarily. It is the community that they create and the way they support and encourage each other to get there in the first place, and to not feel bad if they haven't done anything else during the week, because somebody else there won't have done anything either, and just doing what they can manage to do, but also feeling in a space where they feel safe to have a try and safe to step out of their comfort zone a little bit and do something a bit different, whether that be pushing themselves to walk less in one session, or just trying by doing some of the silly games and things that we do. So I think for me, it's finding other people that support your journey and don't think that you're silly for wanting to try, and where you can just have a go. And I think that is more powerful than anything, and from what I've experienced with my women, definitely.
Great stuff. I'm conscious of your time, Juliet. Is there anything that we've not asked you? I did promise you an hour, and I'm just conscious of looking at the clock going, oh, we're nearly there. Is there something that we've not asked you that you would have liked us to ask, or something more importantly that you just want to talk about with all the experience that you've got? I'm just, here's your soapbox kind of thing.
And we've covered lots of my kind of hot topics, lots of things that I like to talk about. I do kind of feel like I just want to be really positive, because there are so many barriers and there are so many issues, particularly if you're running in the perimenopause. And I just want to be positive and say that not all women are as badly affected as we might think, but B, it is a transition. It is there is a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, but there are lots of women who experience the perimenopause in a really positive way, and there are lots of positives. It's a time when you can feel much more self-confident and empowered, and you sort of don't take nonsense from anybody, and you feel wiser and you feel stronger, and you're not afraid to speak your mind, and there's lots of opportunities that come during this time of life as well. So I kind of don't want to paint a bleak picture of barriers, so to speak, but just to maybe think a little bit more about opportunity as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. That fits really well with what Lorraine was saying. We interviewed a spiritual intuitive life coach the other day, and she was a lot more, looking at trying to look at the positives and the opportunities and the potential that we've got as women sort of moving forward into that next phase of life. So that's really nice. Where do people find you, Juliet? So if they want to get in touch, work with you, how can they do that?
Thank you.
Plug the
best
book.
Place. Oh, thank you. But yeah, I've got a lot of things to plug, but the best thing to do, the best thing is just to go to my website, julietmcgrattan.com, and then on there you'll see I've got courses, my books are on there, it's got links to my social media, so and I have a newsletter every week. So yeah, just that's the best place to go, drjulietmcgrattan.com.
Brilliant. I'll link to that when we release the interview as